Well, good afternoon. Thank you for spending a couple moments with us today here at the Wehrly Group. We've been getting a lot of compliments from some of the videos we've been making, mostly because we're making videos in response to people saying, hey, I want to understand this better. There's too many rumors and too many different things being said about this, and if you guys could clarify that as tax experts, I'd really appreciate it. So what's causing this video today to occur is I had a gentleman that came in yesterday with some very pointed questions for me that actually even I couldn't answer. You may remember I'm an enrolled agent with the United States Treasury Department. I am admitted to practice before the Internal Revenue Service, and I take that designation very seriously. Here's his question. Mr. Wehrly, if Roth IRAs are so great, if you can have hundreds of thousands of dollars of tax-free income every year, income that doesn't trigger taxation on your Social Security benefits, by the way, that's all true, why don't I have one? Why hasn't it been discussed with me? I work with Fidelity, Merrill Lynch, Charles Schwab. I have investors. I have a CPA that I've worked with, and none of them has ever mentioned converting my very large traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. Why not? I said, sir, I don't know. You need to call your CPA. You need to call your financial advisor and wonder if they haven't done you a disservice. Because if we had met you 10 years ago, every penny that you're pulling out of your IRA today by now would likely be out of a Roth IRA. So I didn't want to spend too much time today, but I kind of wanted to reiterate kind of Roth IRAs, some of the myths and things that surround them. And I'm sorry if this will be boring to some people, but there's an awful lot of people out there that if you understood how magical, and that's the right word, how magical a Roth IRA can be and how transformative it can be in your family, your finances, your retirement, and even in your inheritance, you'd have one today. We had a gentleman, by the way, that drove down from Dallas the other day to visit our beautiful offices here in Spring, Texas. And I said, you know, surely there's somebody up in Dallas that could have helped you. And he said, no. He said, there wasn't. I had to come down here. Came down, we had a great meeting, and I spent the night and went home the next morning. So let's talk about Roth IRA. First of all, what we have, if we go all the way back, is we have what's called a tax regulation that's called the Taxpayer Relief Act. Now please know that tax legislation is fairly easy to understand. Right now, today, as I make this video, we're operating under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Well, come on. I think it's pretty obvious what was designed, what was contained in this legislation that we're currently operating under. So we go back to 1997, and we have what's called the Taxpayer Relief Act. Now, it introduced a lot of different tax relief benefits for many taxpayers, one of which was the Roth IRA. Now, the Roth IRA was basically kind of created and conceived by Senator, notice that word, Senator William V. Roth. No kidding, he's famous or infamous as the creator of this tax-free device. So that's kind of point number one. Point number two is that a lot of people will call me up and they'll say, hey, I'm wondering if I can convert money from my existing IRA into a Roth IRA. And of course, we'll start talking about that. Well, often they'll say, I was told that I'm too old to do that. Sir, you're referring to putting new money into a Roth IRA. The ability to convert money from your existing traditional IRA to a Roth IRA is unlimited. You just have to pay the tax. So he said, well, I didn't know that. So I've had people tell me, well, Patrick, I think I'm too old to convert money from my existing IRA into a Roth IRA. I think I'm too old. That's not true. I think I'm too young. That's not true. I think I make too much money. That's not true. I think I don't make enough money. That's not true. None of that's true. Basically, you could take $50,000 today, I mean right today before I finish this video, out of your traditional IRA, put it into a Roth IRA. You just have to pay the taxes. By the way, there's two ways to do that. Some people have a lot of money in their checking account. So they might decide, hey, I'm going to have to pay a tax, $15,000, maybe $20,000. I have enough money in my savings account or under my mattress to pay that. Why am I talking about that? Because that way the whole $100,000 goes from the traditional IRA into the Roth IRA. Now, other people don't have that kind of money. So we have to take the taxes out of the money as it's coming out of the traditional IRA and going into the Roth IRA. That's called a withholding. We do that all the time. But now, only $80,000 arrives to start growing tax-free in the Roth IRA. So again, those are some things to think about. Now, if you're a younger person and you're working, you might want to start contributing new money to a Roth IRA. I mean, think about it. Why put the money in a regular IRA and have it grow there and then have to take the money out and pay taxes on it to put it in a Roth? Might be better to just go ahead and put the money in the Roth in the first place and let it grow in there tax-free. Let me tell you a quick story about tax-free. I was teaching a class some years back, and I had a lady there. Her husband was not with her. And she said, Mr. Wehrly, thank you for explaining Roth IRAs to us here in the class. She said, but I think you've made a mistake. I said, oh, really? I said, I didn't realize that you're a tax expert. And she said, I'm not. I said, well, I am. So I'm guessing I didn't make a mistake, but please tell me what you think, you're talking about in a nice way. She said, well, I understand that if I put $100,000 in a Roth IRA because of a conversion, I understand that I never have to pay taxes on that money again. I said, yes, ma'am, that's correct. She said, but I'm positive I have to pay taxes on the growth. I'm positive that if that grows by $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, or even $50,000, I'm positive I'm going to have to pay taxes on that. I said, ma'am, you're dead wrong. The law is the law. Publication 590, Chapter 2, and you don't have to pay taxes on the money that you deposited or the growth. And she said, well, that's ridiculous. I said, ma'am, the only thing in this conversation that's ridiculous is it's ridiculous that you don't have one, that it hasn't been explained to you properly, that you haven't taken advantage of this. Well, she still fought back. She said, you mean to tell me that if my husband, who was recently retired, had a $500,000 Roth IRA, and that Roth IRA went up $100,000 this year, and we pulled that money out, we wouldn't have to pay 1 penny of tax on the $100,000 worth of growth? I said, yes, ma'am, that's correct. So it turned out there were other people in the class that were a little confused as well. So I put up publication 590 right on the whiteboard, and we went through it, and they were amazed. And you may be amazed too. So please understand that we're sensitive to the fact that maybe not everybody understands as much about the Roth IRA as they're supposed to. We kind of assume in the financial community that everybody knows about Roth IRAs and they have them and they're contributing to them and they're converting money every year. How do you eat an elephant, by the way? One bite at a time. So if you have a large IRA, you might want to take $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 out of that regular IRA, the traditional IRA each year, pay the taxes, and put the money over into a Roth. You often want to do it slowly because you don't want to take too much money out of your traditional IRA because the IRS considers that income, GI, gross income, that year. And of course you have to pay taxes on it. And as you take more and more money out, your tax bill gets higher and higher and higher. And at some point, it's not mathematically feasible. There are some issues, by the way, with older people that have qualified for Medicare, that are on Medicare Part A and B and so forth. And we would want to talk to you about what that would look like in your individual circumstances. So again, from 30,000 feet, A Roth IRA is a fabulous device. By the way, here's a question for you that you might want to comment on or send us an email on. If most of the senators in the Senate of the United States of America have Roth IRAs, and they're not going to be paying taxes as they take money out of their Roth IRAs in retirement, would it be easier for them and the congressmen and women, would it be easier for them to vote higher taxes for you if they didn't have to pay the higher taxes that they just voted on for you? Well, I think it would. I think that many times when we're looking at higher tax legislation, I think the senators, congressmen and women that are voting on that, they've already protected themselves. You know, they've already dealt with that eventuality. Folks, taxes are going up. I mean, they're going way up. And what if you weren't worried about that anymore? What if you had a large Roth IRA? What if you bit the bullet, just kind of worked it out to where you went ahead and paid the taxes now? And by the way, some of the lowest tax rates in U.S. history, taxes are on sale, just a thought. So if you took advantage of those lower rates, went ahead and bit the bullet, paid the taxes, and had the money in a Roth, you wouldn't be worried about higher taxes because you wouldn't be paying them. Remember, all of the money that you deposit into a Roth IRA and all of the growth on that Roth IRA is absolutely tax-free. Well, Patrick, what happens when I pass away? Well, then it goes tax-free to your wife. She takes money out for the rest of her life, tax-free. Well, what happens when she dies? Thank you for asking. Great question. The money goes to your children or your beneficiaries, also tax-free. They're also taking the money out tax-free. Listen, it's a great plan. It's almost miraculous, as I said in the beginning, how well it works if you have good tax advice, if you have a tax advisor that knows what he's talking about. And that would unfortunately or fortunately describe us. We are both financial experts, but also tax experts as well. So again, you can get help from anybody that you want to, but make sure that they're going to give you the right information. Maybe even they're going to prepare your tax return to make sure that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. So again, if you have a question about this or anything else we've discussed recently, please contact us. Be happy to have a cup of coffee with you, spend a few minutes with you on the tax issue that you're asking about. Again, by phone, by email, by telegraph, however it would work. So contact us if you have any questions. Thank you for your time.